Welcome to Nav Chat, the show for the New Zealand orienteering and navigation sports community.
Morning, Tom. How's it going?
Morning, Gene. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
What's been happening with you this month, orienteering-wise?
This month has been good for orienteering. It was fairly quiet in February, but things have started up again. I've had a few races, and my training has been going good. Actually, I've got some niggles that I'm managing, but I've been able to keep up training, and my fitness is coming along quite well. So I'm looking forward to a race this weekend, and as you'll see, the season is really starting now. So I'm really looking forward to trying to put my fitness to use in some longer races, especially.
So you would have done the turbo sprint weekends in Manawatu, and did you race at Katoa Po?
Yep, and I also raced there, and yeah, we've got another NOL race this weekend, and Nationals is on the horizon.
Nice,
also,
yeah, things are really kicking off, and great that lots of these events are still going ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Nice change from recent years.
Yeah, but the big event for us over the past month has been you doing GODZone with Ataraxia MacPack. Congratulations on your third place. That was amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was it's a tough old week of racing, but yeah, great to have finally got cracked to the podium. It was cool.
Yeah, we were all really impressed. Was that the longest time you've been out on course?
Yeah, yep. Wanaka back in 2015 2015. I think we were out for just over 6 days, whereas this time we were pushing 7 for the race. And I think we're a lot faster than we were back in Wanaka as well.
Yes, that's really saying something. And you can look at the time for Avea, who won again. That was certainly the longest winning time of the GODZone.
Yeah, there were some definite points, and especially in stage 3, which was the really long haul from the Cascade River over to GlenOrchy, where you thinking about the rest of the course was a bit dangerous because you just had so far left to go.
And dangerous mentally,
Yeah. You can really get yourself into it's a definite one of those events, I think, where you need to have in the back of your mind that it's a long race, but to help yourself psychologically, you also have to just think, what's the next place we're trying to get to? Let's get to this next big milestone. Let's just think about finishing this stage. And you can allow yourself, you need to obviously be tactical and think about what's to come, but the minute to minute thoughts, it's good to not get too caught up in how far is left.
Yeah, some good words there. But at the far opposite end of the spectrum, the guest that I've brought on for this week is we're doing much shorter races than GODZone.
Indeed.
So
indeed, we're kind of going from one this month. We're kind of talking a wee bit about event racing, but we're also talking a wee bit about sprint orienteering. And you've got one of New Zealand's fastest young sprint talents, Penelope Salmon, on the interview. Shall we have a listen?
Yeah, let's see what she has to say.
Hello.
Hey, Penelope, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Cool. Yeah, I'm well. Thanks for coming on Nav Chat.
No worries.
So congrats on your win at the Knockout Sprint stuff, the Knockout Sprint weekend and the Knockout Sprint day, specifically a couple of weeks back. Was that your first time doing Knockout Sprints?
No, it was my second. My first time was doing the Lonely Mountain Sprints about a year ago.
Do you feel like you improved at Knockout Sprint between those times?
I feel like I haven't had enough practice to say I've improved at Knockout Sprint between those 2 times, but they both went pretty well. So yeah, it was good. Yeah,
that was my first time just a few weeks ago, actually, doing
really?
it. So I was quite nervous going into it, just not knowing what to expect, doing the head-to-head style stuff. Do you feel a lot of pressure when you're starting head-to-head with other people?
No, I really enjoy it. I think it's like one of my favorite things, actually, doing the head-to-head, because it makes you really push yourself to go faster. I think it's quite exciting. I find it really exciting, actually, just starting the start line with everyone. And if you know, and you kind of can feel where you are compared to everyone when you come to like the same control ones, if you've got butterfly loops and things. So it's quite good. I really enjoy it. And you did really well. Congrats to you too then. You came second, right?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. Yeah, I was pretty relieved actually. I got quite close to Joe, but he's definitely too fast. Yeah, I noticed that I feel a bit more pressure, and there's kind of this like cloud of a little bit of anxiety that's just distracting me a little bit from some of the navigation. Whereas if I do a mass start in the forest, I feel like I have a lot more time because the race is a lot longer. There's more time for things to play out. And so I'm a bit more relaxed. Is that something you've noticed, or you feel like you have full mental bandwidth even for the fast sprints?
I feel like with the mass start in the forest, that's usually in the sense of a relay. So I feel a lot more pressure because I'm thinking about my team and every single leg. I feel like there's a lot more chance for mistakes in the forest, whereas in the knockout sprint, it's usually there's not too much room for error. And so even though I made a couple of little mistakes, even on that last one, like you can see that I could see Lizzie was, where she was, so I can like sprint as hard as I can to catch up. So it gives you a lot of motivation, I think, mostly. I didn't find it too hard to stay focused because everything's going so fast. So you really have to make sure that you're keeping track and planning ahead. Yeah.
Cool. So let's zoom out a little bit. Where are you with your studies and career and other things outside of orienteering?
Yeah, well, I finished school last year. It was like end of COVID year though, so it was not such a good, not so much fun. We had to organize our own graduation and everything. But then I'm just having about 6 months off before I go to university in the US in August. At the end of August, I start university there. And so I'm meant to be starting to revise my calculus because I haven't done that in a while. And before I start back at school. But I'm just working right now, just with a couple of my other running friends who are going off to UCLA. So
cool. And what drew you to the US?
Well, I mean, it's quite standard for runners to go there now. I think there's like nearly every runner in New Zealand is going over to the US, and it's just the whole the experience is just so cool because in New Zealand, we don't have anything like this where you have your whole team that you're running with and you're training with. Like over here, I train 99% of the time, I'm just by myself. So it's quite lonely. Whereas over there, you have your team and they become like your best friends, and you get to race in races against hundreds of people rather than like 20 people. So I don't know, I'm really excited for the whole experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit more about your track season this year? Because we've been following along and you've had some quite good performances in some of the big national races. So what have been your priorities with the track running at the moment?
Yeah, I was actually just reflecting on this the other day. I didn't realize how well of a season I'd run. I started off the end of last year. I kind of took a break from running. I had tired myself out. I'd been training so hard and I was just really mentally exhausted. So I took a bit of a break over the summer, and then I came back in and it was racing season, which I find a lot more fun because it's a lot less training, less like distance you're having to run in between trainings because you have racing to prepare for every week. I'm racing once or twice every week. So it's also really rewarding racing. So at the end of last year, I had 2 really bad runs and I was really upset because I'd been training so hard. And then when I came back, I immediately did a 3K at the national 3K and came second, and that was in the open women's, and ran a huge PB. So it's just getting that confidence back that really helped me, and then that's just driven me through the whole rest of the season. So I've tried running a mile for the first time and an 800 for the first time, which I've never done, and I was really happy with my times. And finally last week I think I ran a 1500 PB, so everything's been going really well actually. Yeah.
Cool. Are you happy to share some of the times that you've run this season?
Yeah, my 3K time was 9:30.09, so just over 9:30, and then my mile time was 4:40, and my 800 time was 2:11.13, and my 1500 time was 4:23. But I'm trying again next week to hopefully go closer to 4:20. Yeah, for the last race of the season, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, they're incredible times. And how do they stack up with the other top junior girls' times that we've seen in New Zealand athletics over the last years?
Yeah, my 1500 and 3K are the fastest times in under 20s, and my 800 time was probably around like, I don't know, like third or fourth or something. And my mile time, I think, is number one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I qualified for the under 20 worlds for the 15 and 3, but I'm not sure if I'll go yet. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I also heard that you're going to spend some time in Europe this year for orienteering. What are your plans so far?
Yeah, we plan to fly out on April the 30th, which is really exciting. It's quite soon. It's like a month away. And I will be firstly going over to Tiamila in Sweden, and I'm staying with a family before then, and then I'm competing for their club. And then I'm hoping to go to a training camp, one of the WOC training camps, and then there's some selection races after. And then hopefully World Cup round 1 in Sweden, and then just continuing on basically every competition there is on, I'm going to be trying to attend. I'm so excited, but a little bit scared, but also mostly excited. And I'm really, it'll be really great when all the Kiwis also come over for all the competitions too.
Yeah, hopefully some other people will join you at some point on your big trip. I think what I enjoyed the most about those early trips that I did when I was a junior was having less pressure and being able to enter every race that I could possibly find and not worry if I got too tired. Whereas some of these later trips, we've had to be a bit more constrained and just focus on walk and try not to do too many other things. But I think it's, you're in a really great position to jam as many races as you can into those months. And the experience will be so good for your orienteering, getting thrown into new terrain. So WOC is all sprints. What's the World Cup that you're doing?
It's also mostly sprints. Okay. Yeah. So I think there's a sprint relay in that that there's a team for, I think. And then I think it's like a couple more sprints. It's sprint focused, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. So you'll be absent from a lot of the New Zealand season over the next few years then. Have you got any timeline on how long your course of the US will take and when you might be back in New Zealand for? Is there a part of the year where you'll be on holiday and so you can come back?
Yeah, unfortunately I don't get too many breaks actually, because, well, the US degree is 4 years long, and I have a break in the winter time over New Zealand summer. I have a short break, and I'll probably come back to New Zealand for that, for Christmas time. But then there's not much orienteering going on then, though, in New Zealand. And then over my summer break, which is the European summer, my family and I would hope to be orienteering overseas. So I don't know if I'll come back to New Zealand for much, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I hope to keep orienteering in the US as well, because Boston has quite a lot of events on, actually, like nearly every weekend, and they're really close, all nearby. And I've looked up if there was any scary things I need to be like, that can win the bush, but it looks like it's going to be all right actually in Boston. And there's some people at Harvard that orienteer, so yeah, it looks pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, that's good to hear. I think you can also focus a lot on the running, which of course will fall back onto your orienteering performance as well, I'm sure. So it's not like you're neglecting orienteering while you're there. And I think you'll get a taste when you're in Europe for just how fast the top few elite athletes are, and then you'll get a good gauge for how many seconds you need to shave off your times to be in line with the top orienteers. So yeah, I think that you should be able to see like a really clear plan. At least I'm optimistic that you'll see a really clear plan of how you can get closer to some clearer WOC performances if you're still interested in doing WOC in future years. I'm going to Vancouver actually for most of next year, so I was also checking on what scary things I have to be aware of. But I did find that there are some things I have to be aware of. There's bears if you go too far away from the center of town. So yeah, it's funny. These things
yeah, Canada's a bit more scary. There's grizzly bears there. There's only black bears in where I'm going in Massachusetts, which they don't really hurt. They kill like one person a year. But grizzly bears are scary.
Yeah, I'm fairly concerned about that, especially with the trail and mountain running where you can go fairly far away from the city. And yeah, I haven't really got my head around that yet. It's funny coming from New Zealand where we don't have anything to think about.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of really exciting stuff lined up, and there's a lot of us who are looking forward to seeing how you go in your first time at WOC and things like that overseas. So good luck.
Thanks.
Is this the second episode in a row that we get to bring up your track times, Tom?
Yeah, definitely not up to scratch. There's some super fast times that she's running there. It's really impressive. And I think we're kind of seeing that flow through to some of the results in sprint races of late. Modern sprint orienteering requires some pace to do really well, and clearly she's got that in spades.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see what kind of where she comes in an elite field overseas, just what that track speed gets you. And yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Yannick Michels from Belgium, who certainly had these track times that was miles ahead of, or for a while there was miles ahead of the rest of the field. And yeah, it was just like consistently getting close to the top. Not as much at the top as pure running speed would suggest. So there's definitely some other elements coming into the sprint orienteering. But yeah, it's, you know when you can start with that level of speed, that if you have a good race, then you can be the best. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to following Penelope over the years ahead. Yeah,
definitely. I think as well, it's going to pose some interesting selection conundrums for New Zealand orienteering. If you look at Yannick and his results, especially when he was earlier in his, I guess, speeding up phase as becoming a kind of upper middle distance runner, he was pretty erratic with his sprint results, but with time, he's just sort of like evened out around that kind of top 5 in the world kind of point. It'd be interesting to see if Penelope gets faster, maybe not doing as much orienteering, to see what happens with her sprint results, and also what that means for how does New Zealand choose orienteers for world champs and the like. A runner in America running in American fields, how do we even compare that to New Zealand? Later problem, good problem to have, but potentially challenging.
Yeah.
Technique wise, so you kind of touched in the talk there a little bit on knockout sprints, and we've just had that really cool National Sprint League race down in the Manawatu, which had a range of courses. And that brings us to maybe some lesser talked about elements of not just sprint orienteering, but all orienteering. And that's something we could loosely call map admin. Do you want to define that a little bit for us, Gene? What do you class as your kind of map admin skills?
Yeah, so this is my personal take. I would describe map admin as all of the parts of executing an orienteering race that are not navigation. So it's nothing to do with reading the contours and reading the vegetation of the map. It's not to do with interpreting the control descriptions that you might have on your arm or on the map to show exactly where the flag is placed. It's not to do with route choice. So what's left? Well, there's all this stuff about the number and all the pink stuff on the map, actually. So going to the right control, not missing out controls, not misaligning the leg lines on the map and navigating to the wrong control. There's a bunch of stuff that is required and is almost never even a conscious thought, but suddenly it goes wrong.
It sounds really simple, right? Like we can all count theoretically. So these skills sound really simple.
Yeah.
Can you go from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8? Super, super easy things to do when you're not under lactic acid load. You're not trying to fill your brain with all these complex navigation decisions and trying to think multiple controls ahead, essentially creating the perfect storm for confusing yourself about, was I going to control 13 and was that number 127 or was it 129 and was it the tree or the fence corner? You know, these things sound super simple, which is probably why we don't focus on them. But many a orienteer will have a story from over the years where they have navigated to the wrong control. I know I mispunched in the JWOC A final in Australia on probably one of my best ever runs when I ran straight past the control because I made a map administration error. You've got examples of it too, I'm sure. Shall we have a look at a map and just try and first just define the problem a little bit more, give with an example, and then we'll talk about some things that you can do to help mitigate the risks of a map administration error.
Yep. So let's just throw the viewer into a fairly complicated map here. But as I was saying, these map admin errors are not about the complexity of the map, although if there's a lot of navigation going on, I think it increases the chance of a map admin error. And so the challenges I see in this particular leg coming up is that you've got a map flip in an area that requires a lot of navigation. You've also got a lot of dark colors on the map. You've got the purple and all these black lines. So there's this inefficiency coming up from these like extra tasks that have to be done on top of just pure navigation. And as soon as you get this map flip, this is what you're going to see on the other side. You've got a fairly detailed leg straight to number 14. And then you've got this passageway, which is fairly uncommon. So there's all this mental overhead and the risks here of not planning ahead enough and ending up like missing number 14 completely because you're too busy. Maybe you don't even see it on the map because there's a lot of black lines going on there. Maybe
Could you just jump up to the control descriptions as well? We can just see how much more complicated it looks. I think they're in the top left. So kind of like what you're alluding to there is that we have high areas of high cognitive load are places where a map administration error can happen, where we can make an error on those fundamental skills of counting and keeping track of where we are.
Yep. It's not that you missed the attack point. It's not that the route choice was bad. It's this that you fell apart at something far more fundamental, like didn't even see the control on the map or saw it, but then forgot about it straight away because you were trying to work out the passageway.
The example you gave of missing 14 here is, again, the control descriptions could lead you into it. While we look at this and it looks very clear at the top that there's if you scroll up just a touch, we can see that 14 is at the top of the descriptions after the start. We can also see that it's got the follow tapes 60 meters line and then control 15. In your rush, especially if you imagine you've got 1 to 13 on your arm as well, you could quite easily jump to, I need to find the control after the map flip, which is going to be misinterpreted as the 60 meters. I'm going to number 15, which is 40. And they're kind of on a straight line as well. You could inadvertently start navigating to 15 and miss 14.
Absolutely. And this is the kind of thing that I've done in the past. And I think anyone who's done a number of seasons in orienteering has surely done something like this, where they've gone straight from the start triangle to 15.
Okay, so first, before we jump onto new examples, let's just talk a little bit about the problem. So we've said map admin error is something which isn't related to the navigation per se. It's more about the pink stuff. It's keeping track of the crossings, the control numbers, all of that sort of thing. Some of the risk factors for making an administration error are, first of all, there's like the cognitive factors. So that's, am I in a really complex part of the map? Am I trying to process loads of things and potentially overloading my brain? Another factor can be course factors. So are there lots of crossings close to the controls or controls that are set on a straight line? Those are things which can increase the risk of a map admin error as well. Do we have another example? Yeah, here we go.
So this
is another one. So this is talking to what we talked about. There's many controls. It's a complex area. There are a lot of controls with very similar numbers, very close together. This is a high risk zone for an admin error. Talk us through what happened.
Yep, absolutely high risk. So I was having a pretty good race. I was racing hard though, and I was coming through the end of the course, number 14. I just had to get 15 and go straight through to the pivot and finish. Easy peasy. But as you can see, this pivot has a lot of lines coming out of it, and also my number 15. So both my last two really difficult controls, 15 and 16, had pivots at them. And I spent the whole time from 14 to 15 trying to confirm what leg I was supposed to be doing and checking that I hadn't mistaken any of the numbers, that I hadn't got any of the wrong leg lines. And in doing so, I ran right past 15. I was too busy sussing what on earth was going on at 16. And I ended up, I'll show you in a second, my route was actually just came straight through here, didn't really go that close to 15, and was sailing off to 16 before I realized, whoa. I'm pretty sure I missed a number here. What's going on? Like complete panic because it's a mass start, and I knew Curtis was, could have been seconds behind me. I didn't know where he was because we're coming into a pivot. And so like my heart's pounding and my head's just spinning. And yeah, fortunately I realized I just missed 15 and had to go back and get it. But that would have been a classic map admin error. I knew to get it. And prior to, just looking at my map to refold it coming into 15, I intended to get it. I just forgot like 5 seconds before punching the control. It was bizarre, but it happens.
So what can we do to try and avoid these map admin errors? I mean, an obvious thing we can do is we can slow down. We can try and do less cognitive overload, but that's not really what we're trying to achieve in orienteering. We're trying to go as fast as we can. So what else can we do?
Yeah, and therein lies the trade-off of these map admin errors. Because it's not like a conscious thing, it's very hard to prevent against it other than staying as concentrated as possible and slowing down. So like, I really wish I had a better answer for these. There are some tips and tricks, like having a really explicit process in your head that you can execute every time. But obviously when the map admin mistake happens, it's happening in the context of your brain jumping around and forgetting about the process in the first place. So practicing a good process, not going too fast, but of course that's a direct trade-off with your speed. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Tom? I don't have really a solution that would just like end these kinds of problems.
No, so I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a tricky one. As with all things in orienteering, as you go faster, there's a lot of compromise. I think probably your comment around having a really solid process for every league is really important. Over the last year or so, when we've been talking about an orienteering process, we've been focusing on direction, simplification, knowing where you're going. We haven't explicitly been stating the importance of the control description and the control you're heading to next as part of that initial plan in a league. So the ARC, the trying to simplify your leagues in terms of attack point, route choice, and then control. So in a sprint race or a relay where these errors are most likely to happen, it's about making sure that you're not chopping that last little bit of the league plan out, that you're actually looking, okay, I'm at 3. While that's fresh in your mind, I'm going to 4. It looks like it's on a tree, cross-referencing that with your control description. And when you get to 4, repeating that process. So just being really familiar with that complete league plan rather than
and thorough league plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Which feels clunky to start with, but if you practice it more and more, it gets faster. I think using your control descriptions as well is important. They can be a bit of a double-edged sword. You can try and think 2 or 3 controls ahead and we're trying to remember I'm going to control 5, which is number 175, and then I'm going to 6, which is 182, is a surefire way to get cognitive overload. But it's maybe a case of identifying these high risk zones and just paring that back a little. So you're only thinking about the next control. And instead of planning the specifics of the entire next leg, you're focusing much more on the leg you're on at the moment and running that full plan cross-referencing with your control description, punching their control, just allowing a second for the next leg to make sure that you are not overloading your brain. But that's all a trade-off, right? All that stuff is like, it all sounds well and good in theory, but it's going to be slightly different for everybody. And it's also, with everything, especially in sprint orienteering, it's a risk-benefit calculation.
Yep, that sounds right to me. One thing that I do is I check the number on the control first and then pull it back to the description. So it's not something that I have to remember all the time. If there's a lot of time, then I might check in advance. But something like a middle distance where there's often not enough time and remembering something extra in my head is a risk, then I will look at the number on the top of the control and then just cross-reference with the descriptions on the way out of the control. That's one way that I've found helps, but that has a fatal flaw, as I think I will show in this next example. So this is the map from the Katoa Po Relay last weekend, and we had 2 missed punches on the same control on different courses. And fortunately, it wasn't me, but it was runners in the Taranaki and Auckland Orienteering team both managed to miss control number 19, got 17, 18, 20. But they got to the finish and were like, no, I definitely punched it, and I checked all my numbers. But what had actually happened, and this is very coincidental that it happened to 2 people on the same night, is the orienteers on those courses punched 18, mucked up 19, hit 18 again, punched 18 a second time, checked the number, didn't even recognize that it was the same control that they'd already been to because it was already nighttime, and then went straight after 20 thinking they'd already got 19, where they'd actually just gone like 17, 18, 18, 20. And that's a trap I've also done once in the past. It requires you to also make a technical mistake and then an admin mistake in a row. But it's the kind of thing that sneaks under the radar, and you get to the finish adamant that you punched it, also adamant that you checked all your numbers. But if you're doing this like retrospective checking where you check the number on the top and then you look for it in the descriptions, you're not going to pick up that it was the wrong number because you're just looking for the code. So
absolutely.
What a sneaky one.
Yeah. So to wrap up that little piece, I guess we could say admin errors as a group cover off the things that aren't technically navigation, but are more about the pink stuff on the map: miscounting, misidentifying, getting confused by run-throughs. Some of the factors that might predispose to them include map factors, so lots of controls close together, legs which are almost straight with a control in the middle. And then there's also like runner factors. So how gassed are you? Are you coming into this section of very complicated controls on like swimming in lactic acid? And how are you scheduling all of the thoughts in your brain? Are you cognitively overloading yourself and doing many things simultaneously? We mentioned some possible tactics to minimize this. So one is identifying the risk when it's there. And the other things you could do is having a rock solid plan for completely executing the leg and not shortcutting before you leave the previous control.
Sounds good. Yep. I think that's the best you can do in practice. Yep.
Nice. Alrighty. So what about news this month? What have we got?
Yeah, well, we're jumping back to your big week. This is the photo of you guys finishing a 7-day race. Looks like a matter of minutes ahead of another team. How was that final stage up the beach? Were you guys under the hammer?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really navigation, to be honest. It was just get out of the kayak, ride the bikes across the bridge, and then keep the sea on your right was pretty much the plan. But no, we were pretty fired up to try and get 3rd place ahead of Top Sport. With a dark zone, we started the paddle basically to get 2/3 of the way through the paddle together. And then we were a short bike ride of about 3 Ks across a bridge and then into 16, 17 Ks on the beach. We just kind of hit it from the start and just started running straight off the bat and didn't stop. I didn't look back for a very long time because I didn't really want to know where the others were. But yeah, I don't know where that run came from, but everyone moved pretty well and knocked back gels and just kept going. It was cool. I think all four of us were all in, and it showed in how well we moved along that beach. I think all the like creaking tendons and buggered feet just got pushed out of the way by some adrenaline. So no, it was great.
Yeah, amazing. I also caught up with the team who got 5th place, the Secret Billionaires. That was a really enjoyable conversation, and you can glean so much more from talking to them than we ever could from watching the GPS tracking. So if you're interested in seeing the antics that the top GODZone teams get up to, especially over a 7-day race like this, then definitely check out the podcast that I did, which has some GPS and a video of the whole thing. So there's been pretty good reception to that one. So obviously people were finding it interesting and or useful.
Yeah, I had a watch. It was real good because we saw the Secret Billionaires a few times out on course, kind of a wee bit back and forth with them. And you have this little bubble thing going on, I guess, when you're racing of just the 4 of you. And depending on your frame of mind, you can feel like you're going much slower or much faster than other teams. But it was really interesting to get kind of more of a blow-by-blow insight into how another team was racing and how their race was going, and how they made their way through the same stages that we did. It was a good talk. Also great to hear some of their navigation choices as well. Reece talks really well about that.
Yeah, he does. He was really impressive. I also did some night navigation. Not only the GODZone is out there at nighttime, so was I. So I did the Katoa Po annual relay, running for Northwest, of course. How much do you like this terrain in Taupo?
Oh, it's cool. I mean, we use these maps for Katoa Po are like relatively frequently used, but even still, they're still really challenging. I think they're a really good mix of complicated contour detail and an array of point features. Because looking at this map, you think, oh, there's so many trees. You can just tell where the trees are and the creeks and everything. But there's so many of them that they're almost useless. It's a bit like rock terrain with trees instead. So I think you have to rely a lot more on the contours underneath it, which makes it terrain that looks much more challenging than the map appears at first sight. Add it into the fact that it's nighttime.
I think this is the perfect terrain for nighttime. At daytime, it can be quite easy when you get the long view across the valley and you can see where you're going. It's might as well be forest at nighttime. You can't see across the valley. There's so many depressions and reentrants that you're always below the ground anyway. So whether it was daytime or nighttime, you can't really see out. So it's very cool, and I will always keep coming back any chance I get to do orienteering in this terrain.
Add in a bit of steam from the geothermal stuff. If we're on one of the maps which has the like geothermal pipelines on it, it can be pretty disorienting orienteering to be running around in the middle of the night on what feels like quite complicated terrain with steam and pipelines crisscrossing everywhere. It's definitely worth a look, this event. It's pretty long running now. Must be getting 30 years maybe. The 30th anniversary may have been last year or the year before or something like that. Pretty cool.
And this was quite a longer version. I was out there for 1 hour, which was really nice. I like that. It was a touch longer than usual, and we all finished a bit later. I had some pretty average moments. Like I was obviously very rusty at the start, screwing up number 1 and 2 were a bit rough, but then I had some really good moments, 7 to 9, then stuffed it up on number 10 again with pretty much almost an admin error at number 10. I thought I was somewhere else. It was just very confusing. So it's definitely a bit rough in places, but a good reminder just to keep everything together.
Now you mentioned Northwest. You're running for Northwest. Northwest had a big weekend of orienteering this weekend just gone.
Yeah, they did. This is from course 1 at a brand new map for us. A very old map that used to be called Wilson Road. now has a new name that escapes me right now, but it's a good mix of hills and sand dunes, which is, there's a few terrains that we have north of Auckland that have this mix, and now we have a new one. It's not a huge area, but it was long enough for a 1 hour course with a map flip, some good mixes of visibility, some really steep hills to make sure that you get your route choices correct. Looks great. I feel like I really missed out on this one.
I think if you were to have a terrain type for each of the 3 Auckland clubs, I think you'd have counties with their mixed sand dune, a little bit of forest that they have on the Awhitu Peninsula. Auckland, you'd have your like pancake flat, kind of celebre, like really flat kind of
like the classic Woodhill South stuff.
Coast Road, Woodhill South stuff.
Yeah.
But I reckon for Northwest, you have these kind of like mixed maps, which Pulpit Rock's kind of the same. Seems like there's tracks, there's grunty areas, there's detailed areas, and then down in the southwestern part of the map, there's that green valley, which to me just that's like quintessential kind of northwest kind of map right there with the detail and low pines and that sort of thing. So yeah. Really cool map.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me a lot of Slater Road, and Waianaki has some patches like this also. So it's like, it seems kind of easy because there's a lot of trails, but it's amazing how much you get pushed around when you're trying to take these tight turns, and you're losing your sense of direction if you're pushing it at a high speed, which is really important for Europe, I think. It's the kind of stuff we don't practice so much in the flatter areas of Woodhill Forest. So super cool. Here's a few pictures. So this is mixed. This is not Woodhill. This is not what we're used to. So this is great to see different types of forest. There was also a race on the Saturday and the Sunday. So back to some classic Woodhill stuff on the Sunday there. So very cool to see 2 races pulled off in the thick of the COVID wave. Case numbers are still pretty high at the moment, and we had a really good plan and kept start blocks separate, and everyone had a good chance to go orienteering. So
nice, really cool.
Really cool.
They've been orienteering in Europe as well, but this time on snow.
Yeah, so more ski orienteering news. They had the world-ski-orienteering champs actually over the recent days. You might remember the name Anna Olvenson. She was in Auckland for a year, a few years back, and she was really good at the junior world-ski-orienteering championships, and has herself a gold medal at senior level now in the sprint relay. And this is a 2-person relay, and they go out 3 times, so it's actually quite a different format. Here is what the courses look like. So it's quite a similar loop 3 times, and as you might see from the results there, they're only out for 6.5 minutes. So it's full VO2 max effort on this stuff.
Yeah, that's hectic.
Yeah, just lapping it out real hard. So that's an interesting format. Not something that we've really seen for forest orienteering, to do like a 2-person relay with 6 legs in total. It's quite different.
It sure is. It's also hard to know. I mean, you and I not being cross-country skiers, it's also hard to know what the trade-offs are with some of the route choices. Is it just a straight is great sort of situation, or do you really want to get on those those wider ski trails? What about tight turns? How easy is it to make a tight turn on a cross-country skis?
Yeah, questions that I have also.
Maybe you could get a cross-country skier that we can interview to ask these things.
Yeah, there's certainly more questions than answers at the moment. This is the middle distance race, which was also held on similar terrain. This is in Finland, quite far north in Finland also.
Mm-hmm.
The contours and vegetation are really by the by for this map. It's pretty smooth going, really just about the trails. Reminds me very much of some mountain bike orienteering, but in like a very dense grid, very dense network of trails, right? The mountain bike trails tend to go like a little bit longer before there's another junction, whereas looks really quite cool, actually. A lot of decisions to be made, a lot of things to get wrong if you miss a junction. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Indeed. And New Zealand might have runners going to Europe. Hopefully we'll have runners going to Europe this year with Junior World Champs in Portugal and WOC in Denmark.
Yeah. So once the ski orienteering season wraps up, it is all go for forest and sprint. So New Zealand is looking at sending a team to JWOC for the first time in 2 years. And the applications for the JWOC and WOC management are open. So if you're interested in putting your name forward and helping out, then I think that's something really good to do. There has been some tricky situations over the past few years where the coach and manager for JWOC have been undersubscribed, and we've been really fortunate to pull together with some help from overseas to get a managing team managing for the team. So we really want as many people putting their names forward as possible, just to avoid that situation occurring again. That was a tricky one.
JWOC and WOC aren't the only one. World Masters this year in Italy. Some interesting looking terrain in Puglia.
That's right. This is the sprint map. Looks pretty dramatic.
Very dramatic
view from there. So yeah, that looks cool. This is what the map looks like. You've got this mix of like very very gritty buildings mixed in with this like very classic Italian like hillside town.
Yeah, tight stairways, route choices, climb versus direct line. Yeah, wow, spectacular. That looks like very exciting. I must say, Italy, over the last decade, with their various races they've had, always managed to find wonderful terrain.
Yeah. Looks pretty good for a holiday also. Looks all pretty nice.
I don't think I'm 35 as Masters, right? Maybe I'm not far off,
Yeah. This is the middle distance terrain here.
Incredible cast terrain.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, lots of depressions, all of a similar size as well. So it can become quite tricky when you're trying to pick off all these 1 and 2 contour depressions, getting yourself curved around off your bearing because you're getting refracted by the hole, by the depression. So
amazing. Great terrain. Yeah, World Masters. Let's keep an eye out for maps later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, close to home, Nationals, Easter. It's been a lot of teasing of also some cast terrain up on Canaan Downs. Sounds like Nelson Orienteering Club are all go for what will be 4 big days of orienteering.
Yeah, so cast terrain is something that I haven't been on very often, and Canaan Downs, west of Nelson, is one of the only places. I don't know where else there is cast terrain in New Zealand. There's some stuff west of Hamilton. Yeah.
South Waikato. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to this long distance, especially on this terrain. And we've got some photos also. Did
you race Nationals last time it was on Canaan Downs?
No, I didn't.
You would have been about 9, probably.
No, I wasn't that young. I think I saw at high school and
M10. You would have been a bit older than that, I think. I remember that I raced. I think that was one of my. It's probably still in juniors. I think I can't remember. It was a long time. It was maybe 2006. Yeah, probably still juniors. Some beech forest that's incredible. I know the maps from that year had some strange distortion happening. I mean, generally they're very good, but there was a couple of hillsides where you're like, what is going on here? There's someone's entered some sort of portal when they've mapped this.
I have been overly critical of mappers because they are the backbone of our sport.
Absolutely.
We don't want to put them off, but sometimes you're like...
Difficult area to map. I mean, it was difficult. There was some... I mean, for the most part, the map was amazing, and it's super tricky to map in this beech forest with so much detail. I mean, you can see in this little map snippet here, how do you even fit all of this detail onto the map? And that map was awesome fun. But I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe my terrible orienteering was the problem.
It's not you, Tom. I've been there since as a fully qualified orienteer, not just as a kid. And yeah, we were there for a training camp actually a few years ago. And in a training exercise, you had time to slow down and like really try to get things right. And there was some moments when I realized there was nothing I could do to get this next control. Like,
that being
I
said,
just went on a compass
Nelson
and like ignored everything until I like managed to find a flag and was like, oh, okay, it's a bit old. If that old would be a kind way to say it.
Nelson have remapped it. I understand Michael Croxford, I think, has been up there and wrestled it into shape. We actually, last time we went through Cannon Downs was on Kahurangi 500. I mean, I did a big bike packing ride and I ran into Michael Croxford up at the top there. So, yeah, very cool area. Go to nationals. I sadly can't. I've got work commitments, but yeah, wishing I was there. It'd be great fun.
Yeah, there's also 2 sprints on the Tuesday and Wednesday, and a knockout sprint on one of those days as well for the keen beans who need to get a bit more experience with this knockout sprint stuff. So,
and do you have a couple of pictures for more pages with pictures of terrain? Because I think Nelson have done a pretty good job of promoting it.
Yeah, I jump onto their website and you've got some good pictures here of some of the terrain. I wanted to just zoom in on the sprint terrain here. Classic campus stuff. Everyone knows how to do this. This is our jam as Kiwis, these school campus maps. So it's going to be all go for the sprint. And this is what the beach forest looks like. So I think most of the Cannon Downs map is open, but there is a decent amount in the beach forest as well. And who knows if there's new mapped areas that are outside of the old map.
The old map was really good because it seemed to like the areas that were well mapped were the white stuff. And the further you got out into the green, you kind of got into the where the dragons live kind of thing. But maybe they've mapped more of that now because it was good. It is travelable. It's just a little bit of things to cut your vision down.
Yeah, it cuts down your vision. It pushes you around a bit. You can see some of the branches on the ground, and then even where the leaves are, there's just a lot of rotting material under the leaves and under the moss. It's very soft.
Heavy terrain, as they say.
It's very heavy. You've got all these young bushes on the ground, so you need to lift your legs high. It's tough terrain in the beach forest, super fast on the grass in the farmed areas, and then really tough going in the beach forest. So I'm looking forward to this long distance with that kind of contrast.
Cool. And then you've got something about getting
Mogden on the media. He did an interview with Fresh FM. This is kind of Nelson, Northern South Island radio station, I believe, and talks all about orienteering and this national championships that's coming up. And yeah, I was just having a listen then, and it's just super cool just to get some exposure to the sport and get someone like Matt to explain it clearly. I think not with no like approximations about like what we're doing, not kind of resorting to what people expect orienteering to be. And yeah, I really love that. Someone like Matt could be the spokesperson. So really looking forward to this national championships, and especially with the organising crew like Matt Ogden, Michael Croxford, and Nathan Favre. A lot of experience within those guys.
Georgia Whitler's in there as well. So one of the Georgia Whitler's in there as a setter or a controller as well. There's some, maybe I need to really try and see if I can get work moved, but I think it's going to be tricky. Anyway, last of all in news is with international travel.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting one. So IOF are pushing for, I guess, a more collective international orienteering community, and they have added a place where you can register as a host family so that other orienteers can travel to your country and find an easier place to stay. Now, this is something that happens all the time anyway, but you have to know somebody, and it's yeah, it's pretty hit and miss. Like if you have the right network, then you can find places to stay anywhere in the world. But if you don't, maybe you just don't know anyone from a certain country, then it can be a bit hard. So this is a way to create a register where you can find a host family very easily, and you can register that you have a spare room and are happy to host someone who may be traveling, maybe they're spending a year at a university overseas, or they're just doing a 1 month vacation. Who knows? So I'm really interested to see where this goes, because that's been something I really appreciate as a New Zealander traveling to Europe to race, is being able to stay with people. And I mean, it's the amount of money that it's saved me, and the amount of friendships that I've made from staying with people is really important to me. So I'm really happy that IOF acknowledged the importance of this and helping to make the experience more seamless.
Hey, maybe it's a way to find a mapper for a project or something you have happening down here. Maybe you could, because I know historically that used to happen. I used to get Finnish and Swedish mappers would come out for a holiday and map some terrain years and years ago.
Yep, and possibly be hosted as well. So, yep, I think this is really interesting and really good for our juniors as well, to get people to come over here and share the experiences of orienteering in their home country, so that we can learn from it, because different places require different styles of orienteering. And sometimes I feel like we don't get enough experience at a range of terrains. And I feel for Australians a lot as well. They've got a lot of quite similar terrain in Australia, and are probably missing out on a lot of the variation that Europe offers. So it's cool.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, I was lucky when I was my late teens, early 20s. I went to Kongsberg in Norway for 3 months, and the club, Kongsberg Orienteering Club, they had like a couple of Swiss, a Bulgarian, and me. And every year they had overseas runners who came and stayed with families in the town, partly to expose the younger club members to other cultures, but also because the orienteering was really good there, and they just liked having other level runners. It was great. It's the way to do Te Mila and Nuclear with a Norwegian, Swedish, or Finnish club, because they organise everything for you. So I'll be interested to see which club Penelope's running for when she goes there.
Yeah.
So maybe this IOF initiative will help make that connection easier for New Zealanders. Should we close it up there, just with a kind of parting thought for the month? We've talked a bit about Cane and Downs. It's been used for nationals before. It's being used again. What, Jean, would be your most memorable nationals, New Zealand nationals map that you've run on?
Yeah, so the memorable ones, definitely the unique ones, and possibly the most physically hard ones you remember also as standing out. The first one that jumps up to me now is actually Nelson again. Last time nationals was there, Big Bush. Yeah, this is also interesting, Big Bush, because I made a massive map admin error on this course. There were two long legs that were very parallel, like perfectly parallel on the map, which is another cause of map admin error, not just legs in a straight line, but two different legs that are very parallel. They were the same length, and they were almost the same route choice as well, but one was in the opposite direction later on in the course. And I started navigating on one leg, and then my brain switched over to navigating the other leg. And I went off to I was supposed to go to control 6, I went to control 14, started doing like the loop in the wrong order before I realized that was like 10, 12 minutes lost or something. And my psychology just like blown, because I was going for the win for sure. And I was in the lead at the time. I knew my form was really good, and like I just couldn't recover emotionally from that.
I think I even ended up.
So that's very rather than. So that
for a bit of context, Big Bush is St Arnaud. It's across the road from St Arnaud. It's a big slope of beach forest with kind of some flats with some complicated manuka scrub, some river terraces where it joins into teetotal flat. But basically, it's grunty, complex slope orienteering.
With low vis, like it's a lot of medium and light green on the map. So it's funny that those really tough ones are really quite memorable. They really stick with you. So that
one's up there for me too. Big Bush. I was going to say, for me, I'd have to say it would be Waianeki. up in North Woodhill. It's like Woodhill with a twist. You've got those incredible bits of sand dune with that really intricate detail. You've got the steep slope orienteering with a big green area, and then you've also got the like lightning fast white forest. I think it's just like the ultimate showcase of Woodhill.
I remember you passing me in that race. I wasn't terribly fit that year, and you came through and properly dropped me up the hill.
I'm sure you've returned the favour since.
Yeah.
Anyway, great chat. Let's reconvene next month, hey?
Yeah. See you next month. We'll have some good race reporting to do by then, I think.
Sweet. Cool. Thanks, Gene. See ya.
See ya.
If you liked the show, please support it by sharing this podcast with one person who would benefit from it. The best place to find more content like this is at genebeveridge.nz, where you can find years of training blogs, race reports, podcasts, and coaching videos. If you don't want to miss future episodes, I recommend subscribing to my newsletter by visiting genebeveridge.nz or by following on social media, Perfect Flow on Facebook and Gene Beveridge on Instagram. For Q&A, send messages to nav@perfectflow.nz.